Hey folks, so the question that we're looking at today is how can we go about cutting holes in our meshes? And the person asking the question was wondering, can they use booleans to cut out shapes and to cut out holes? And the answer to that is yes, you can. And in some ways it's the logical thing to think about doing, where you cut one shape out of another. The problem with it is that we end up with a mesh that is a little bit messy, and that won't subdivide in the way that we expect, or won't smooth out in the way that we expect. Let's take a look at doing that and see what happens. So I'm going to just create a plane. I'm holding down the shift key here and I'm just adding a plane to my scene. And I want to try and use simple examples to try and explain this. So we'll zoom in here. So I'm going to bring up my attribute editor, go over to my polyplane here, and I'm going to set the subdivision width to 4 and the height to 4. So we have a very simple plane here. I'm going to turn off my grid, so we can just see the actual model. Every time we model, really, we should turn on the poly count HUD, which is just here. And we should set our viewport to be wireframe unshaded, so that we can see the topology of the models that we don't have selected. Okay, so this is my very simple surface that I want to cut a hole into. And let's look at doing it with a Boolean first. So if I wanted to cut a round hole in here, I could look at making a cylinder. Now my cylinder is much bigger than my plane, so let's look at scaling up my plane. So I guess I'll bring it up to around 5. Yeah, and that doesn't look too bad. That's about the right size. Okay, so I can use a Boolean to try and cut one shape out of the other. The Boolean operation has to be done in a certain order, and no doubt I'll almost always get it wrong. But I'm pretty sure if I'm cutting out a surface, I need to select that first. So I'll select the plane, I hold shift, and I click on the cylinder. And then I'm going to go up to mesh up here, up to booleans, and I'm going to click on the option box for difference here. And there's two different settings here. The edge setting would leave me with a shape inside it, and in this case that would mean I would get the bottom of the cylinder if I wanted that, and I'll just show you what that looks like. So an inside surface like this. Now I'm going to undo that in this case. If I put it over to normal and I click apply, it just cuts the shape out, which is what I want in this case. So I'm just going to close this guy down. And that has done what I wanted. Now I'm going to change the background color so we can see the plane a little bit clearer. I'm going to press Alt and B to do that. And that's going to you can cycle through different colors here. Okay, and I'm just going to leave it on that one. So that looks initially like what we wanted. The problem with it is that if I look at the mesh now, I have quite a lot of these extra vertices around the outside of the hole. And we need those extra verts, or at least we need some of those extra verts to describe the new shape that we've got. So we'd like to keep quads if we can, because our meshes will be more consistent and more stable as we smooth them out. And the issue here is that we have quite a lot of extra verts. So on this particular face here, if I was to select all the verts, minus that one just there, we can see that our poly count vert selection is 9. So that particular polygon has 9 vertices that are making it up. And that will lead to problems when I try to smooth this surface out. So at the moment I've got 1 on the keyboard press, so I'm looking at the low poly version. If I press 3, this is what I get. And that's not what I'm expecting. I get all of this kind of artifacting going on, and it doesn't look particularly nice. Now I'll also have issues with n-gons if I try and deform this. So for example, if there needed to be some animation done on it and we needed it to deform, I would have issues in and around all these verts here. While booleans can seem like a straightforward way to go, often they can tend to be a little bit more trouble than they're worth, because we have to clean up after them. So in this case we could clean up this mesh, and I'll quickly take a look at doing that. So I'm just going to go back to vertex mode. I'm going to hit 1 to go back to my modeling mode. If I wanted to clean it up, I could do something like the following. I could get rid of this vert, maybe this vert, and let's say that vert there. And I'm just going to hit delete and get rid of those. And I could go over to my multi-cut tool, and I could cut from here over to here, and I could right click. Now that's actually 2 quads. Okay, so I'll just show you what I mean there, just so you see. If I select here, that's actually 4 vertices that make up that polygon, and 4 vertices that make up this polygon. And if I smooth it out, I get something that looks a little bit cleaner for my rounded shape and a little bit more consistent. And we do need to weigh up these technical issues. It sounds a little bit more complicated than it is. We just model in a certain way, and that's why I promote the idea of box modeling. So I could go around and clean up all these other edges, but I'm actually going to show you a different way to achieve the same thing. So I'm going to take this mesh and I'm just going to delete it. Let's just get rid of it altogether. And we're going to come at the same problem from a different direction. I'm going to put down a plane here, and I'm going to bring back up my polyplane settings, and I'm going to set it to 4 by 4. Okay, so a nice simple mesh once again. I could have gone around and cleaned up all of those verts, but if I have a basic understanding of the topology I'm trying to achieve, there's quicker ways to go about creating those kind of shapes. So I'll just show you this little trick and you can practice it and you'll get used to it as an idea. So I'm going to select my mesh just here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to right click, and that's going to bring up my modeling marking menu. I'm going to go over to multi-cut tool and I'm going to click here and I'm going to click across my shape and snap it into the corner there, and I'm going to right click, and that's a cut gone across there. So I'm going to click on this vertex here. I'm going to click on the one on the far side. I'm going to right click to end that operation. So now I've got all these triangles together. I'm going to go into vertex mode. I'm going to select the center vert. I'm going to hold the shift key down again. And what I want to do is split that vertex open. So I want to split it. There's one vert there at the moment. I want to split it so that I get one vert for every line coming into it. So I'm going to go to chamfer vertex, and it's going to do that for me. So now I get a vertex for every line that was coming into it. I'm going to select the face that's in the center and delete it away. And now I'm going to go to vertex. I'm going to select all these verts in the center here. I'm going to hold shift and right click, and I'm going to go to average vertices. And I'm actually going to hit G, and the G hotkey will repeat the last command. I'm going to hit G again and G again and G again. Now I'm going to hit R for scale, and I'm going to scale in a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to my object mode. And I'm going to hit 3 on the keyboard. And now I have a rounded shape, and I could adjust the verts a little bit here to get a more rounded shape, I guess. I could grab this one, and I could grab this guy, shift, grab that guy, and grab this guy. I could hit R, and I could scale in a little bit. And there you go. Now we've got a perfect circle, and it's cut into my shape, and it's very consistent. That is achieving the same thing, but we're being much more precise about our cuts. So instead of me using a Boolean to cut out the hole and then cleaning up after it, I've just been much more precise about my cuts to end up with a circular shape that's neatly cut into the mesh. That is one way we can go about cutting in holes. Just to finish out on this just a little bit, I'm going to select that edge by double clicking on it. I'm going to go shift and extrude the edge. I'm going to extrude it down just like this. I'm going to hit 1 on the keyboard to go back to my low poly, and that cuts the hole in. And now it's still very soft, and you might say, well, how do I get it nice and sharp? And that's back to the idea of supporting edges, so supporting edge loops. So, and because it's all quads, my edge loops will run around neatly for me. So I'm going to put a cut just here, and you see the way it loops around. I'll put another one just on the outside, just there. And if I hit 3, I've got a nicely held up shape. So that is a more consistent way to go about cutting holes in our meshes.